The sun beat down
This path
mercilessly
feels
on the
longer
quiet
every
suburban
time.
street in
Good
San
for the
Diego's
soul, keeps
outskirts,
us young.
turning the
Speak for
asphalt into a
yourself.
shimmering haze. Joaquin Ramirez, an elderly man with silver hair and a frail frame, struggled under the weight of a heavy bucket of water. His left hand trembled as it gripped the handle, while his right pressed against his knee for support, veins bulging like twisted ropes. The midday heat made every step a battle, his breaths coming in short, labored gasps. From across the street, Manuel Rivera noticed him. At 34, Manuel was a single father working as a mechanic at a small garage nearby. His faded gray t-shirt clung to his sweat-dampened skin, and his jeans bore the stains of oil from a long morning under car hoods. He had been walking home after his shift, eager to see his two young children, Lucia 6 with her boundless energy, and Benji 4, who still clung to his stuffed bear. But something in the old man's posture stopped him cold. Without a second thought, Manuel crossed the road. "Let me help you with that, sir," Manuel said, his voice steady and kind. "It's too hot out here for anyone to carry this alone." Joaquin looked up, his eyes squinting against the sun. "No need, young man. I can manage." Manuel shook his head with a gentle smile. "You matter more than my hurry. My boss can wait a few minutes." He bent down and lifted the two buckets effortlessly, his sun-tanned shoulders flexing under the weight. Water sloshed over the edges, soaking the hems of his pants, but he didn't flinch. His focus was solely on getting the buckets to the old man's porch without spilling more. From the second-floor window of the modest house at the end of the street, Soledad Meyer watched the scene unfold. At 32, she was the heiress to the Meyer real estate empire, a world of boardrooms, luxury galas, and calculated smiles. She had come to San Diego to visit her grandfather, Joaquin, after years of living in the fast-paced glamour of Los Angeles, where every interaction felt like a transaction. Her hand holding a coffee mug tilted slightly, spilling a few drops onto the windowsill, but she didn't notice. Her eyes were fixed on Manuel. Who was this man? He helped without fanfare, without expecting a thank you or a pat on the back. In her world, kindness often came with strings, photo ops, tax write-offs, or social leverage. But here in this quiet neighborhood, he acted as if compassion was as natural as breathing. Her heart skipped a beat as he set the buckets down on Joaquin's porch, exchanged a few words with the old man, and turned to leave without lingering. "He's not even waiting for recognition," Soledad whispered to herself, her voice barely audible. She had seen plenty of polished men in tailored suits, but none carried themselves with this quiet strength. His back, not broad like a model's, but solid from honest work, held her gaze until he disappeared around the corner. "Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel." Soledad set her mug down, her mind racing. She had grown up in privilege, her life mapped out by her late father's ambitions. After his passing, she inherited the company, but it came with isolation, friends who vanished when the deals dried up, relationships built on status rather than substance. Visiting her grandfather was meant to be a break, a chance to reconnect with simpler roots. But now this stranger had stirred something she thought long buried, a longing for genuine connection. The next day she found herself at the window again, her coffee steaming in her hand. The clock ticked toward 3:42 p.m., the time she had noticed him pass by before. Sure enough, there he was, same faded shirt, same steady stride. He paused to greet a neighbor, Mrs. Rosa, with a warm nod, then stopped to help an elderly woman named Martha carry her grocery bags a few houses down. Soledad leaned closer to the glass, her breath fogging the pain. She turned to her grandfather, who was reading in the living room below. "Grandpa, that man who helped you with the water yesterday, who is he?" Joaquin looked up from his newspaper, a knowing smile creasing his weathered face. "That's Manuel. Works at the auto shop up the road. Good kid, always lending a hand. Doesn't ask for anything in return. Why not? Doesn't he expect something?" Joaquin chuckled softly. "Not everyone does, mija. Some folks just help because it's right." Soledad nodded, but her thoughts swirled. In her circles, nothing was free. She began to watch him daily, noting his routines, the way he chatted briefly with the ice cream vendor, how he fixed a child's bicycle wheel on the spot, or shielded a stray dog from the sun with his own hat. Each act chipped away at her cynicism. By the fifth day, she couldn't stay hidden anymore. She needed to know him, not just observe. Grabbing a few heavy shopping bags deliberately overloaded and an umbrella with a faulty latch, she stepped out just as clouds gathered. Rain began to fall in light drops, turning heavier by the minute. As if on cue, Manuel appeared at the end of the street. Soledad fumbled with her umbrella, pretending to struggle under the weight of her bags. He noticed immediately and hurried over. "Need a hand?" he asked, his voice calm amid the patter of rain. She looked up, meeting his eyes for the first time, warm, brown, and unassuming. "This umbrella's stuck, and these bags are heavier than I thought." Without hesitation, he took the bags and held his jacket over her as a makeshift shield. "I'm Manuel. Where are you headed?" "Soledad," she replied, her heart pounding. "Just to the end of the street. I live with my grandfather there." They walked side by side, the rain soaking him more than her. Conversation flowed easily. He asked about her day. She mentioned caring for her grandfather while her parents were away on business. It was a half-truth, but it felt safe. Manuel shared a bit about his kids, his late wife, and his simple life at the garage. When they reached the porch, he set the bags down. "If you need help again, I pass by here most afternoons." She smiled, watching him walk away in the rain. For the first time in years, the world felt a little less lonely. The day after their rainy encounter, Soledad found herself back at the second-floor window, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee mug as she stared down the quiet street. The clock on the wall ticked steadily toward 3:42 p.m., and her pulse quickened in anticipation. She told herself it was curiosity, nothing more, a fascination with this man who moved through the world with such unassuming grace. But deep down, she knew it was something else, a pull she hadn't felt in years. Right on time, Manuel appeared at the end of the block. His stride was purposeful, his faded gray t-shirt now replaced by a blue one equally worn from days at the garage. He nodded to Mrs. Rosa, the elderly woman sweeping her porch, exchanging a few words that made her laugh. A block further, he paused when he saw Martha struggling with her overflowing grocery bags. Without hesitation, he took two from her arms and walked her to her door, chatting amiably as if it were the most natural thing. Soledad leaned forward, her breath shallow. How did he do it? Day after day, these small acts of kindness woven into his routine like threads in a tapestry. No cameras, no audience, just pure, effortless goodness. She watched until he vanished around the corner, then hurried downstairs to her grandfather. "Grandpa, tell me more about Manuel," she said, sitting beside Joaquin on the worn couch. He set down his book, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "He's a good soul, mija. Been in the neighborhood about 5 years now, lost his wife, young car accident, I think. Raises those 2 kids on his own. Lucia's a firecracker, always drawing pictures for everyone, and little Benji's shy but sweet. Works hard at that garage, but never too busy to help. Fixed my leaky faucet last month, wouldn't take a dime." Soledad nodded, absorbing every detail. "He seems different, like he doesn't expect anything back." Joaquin patted her hand. "That's because he doesn't. In a world full of takers, he's a giver. Reminds me of your grandmother always putting others first." The words lingered with her as the days blurred into a pattern. On the 3rd day, Manuel stopped to help a young boy whose bicycle chain had slipped off. He knelt in the dirt tools from his pocket, making quick work of the fix, then ruffled the kid's hair before continuing on. Soledad's notebook, hidden in her drawer, began filling with observations. 3:45 greets. Mrs. Rosa. 3:47 chats with ice cream vendor. 3:50 helps child with heavy backpack. By the 5th day, the pull became irresistible. She couldn't just watch anymore. That afternoon, as clouds gathered again, she stepped out with a small bag of groceries and no umbrella, timing it perfectly. Rain started as sprinkles, then sheets, and there he was rounding the corner. "Soledad!" Manuel called out, quickening his pace. "Caught in the rain again." She smiled sheepishly, rain dripping from her hair. "Seems like it. These bags are getting heavy." He took them without a word, holding his jacket over her as they walked. "Bad luck with the weather lately," he said with a chuckle, "but it's nice to see a familiar face." They fell into easy conversation. She asked about his day at the garage, a stubborn transmission on an old Ford that had kept him late. He spoke modestly without complaint, his voice carrying a warmth that made the rain feel less cold. In turn, she shared snippets of her life, caring for her grandfather, working at a small office downtown, nothing glamorous. It was a version of herself she crafted on the spot, stripped of the boardrooms and private jets. "You sound like you have your hands full," he said as they reached her porch. "But it's good you're here for him. Family's everything." She nodded, her throat tight. "It is. Thank you, Manuel, again." He waved it off. "Any time. I pass by most days around this time." From then on, their meetings became routine, unspoken appointments at the edge of the street. On the 7th day, rain gave way to sun, and they walked a bit further, stopping at a small park bench. Manuel shared stories of his children, Lucia's latest artwork, a crayon drawing of their family home, and Benji's fascination with toy cars. "They're my world," he said softly. "After Maria passed, I promised I'd be enough for them." Soledad's heart ached at the quiet pain in his voice. She wanted to share her own losses, her mother's death from overwork, the emptiness of her inheritance, but the words caught. Instead, she said, "They sound wonderful. You're doing right by them." He looked at her, then really looked, his brown eyes searching hers. "What about you?" "No family, besides your grandfather. My parents are abroad a lot. Business." It was true enough, but the omission felt like a shadow between them. Still, he nodded without pressing, and they parted with a promise to meet again. As the weeks unfolded, their walks grew longer. One afternoon, they detoured to the local library where Manuel mentioned his sister Anna's dream of studying medicine. "She's smart, but tuition's a mountain. I send what I can." Soledad listened, her mind racing. That night, she anonymously donated to the library's scholarship fund, earmarking it for local students, like Anna. It was her way of helping without revealing herself, a secret act, mirroring his own quiet kindness. Their conversations deepened. Manuel opened up about his Guatemalan roots, his mother's life as a housekeeper, the values she instilled, help without expectation. Soledad shared fabricated tales of her office job, but wove in real emotions, her loneliness in a crowded world, her search for something authentic. One evening, as sunset painted the sky orange, he turned to her. "You know these walks. They've become the best part of my day." Hers too, she thought, but only smiled. Yet beneath the warmth, a unease stirred. How long could she keep up the facade? Each truth she withheld felt like a crack in the foundation they were building. But the fear of losing him, of him seeing her as above him, kept her silent. Little did she know the first hints of doubt were already forming in his mind. As the afternoons turned into a cherished routine, Soledad and Manuel's walks became the anchor of her days. They met at the same corner, rain or shine, their conversations weaving deeper into each other's lives. Manuel opened up about his modest world, the long hours at the garage, the satisfaction of fixing what others deemed broken, and the quiet joys of fatherhood. Lucia's school projects, Benji's bedtime stories about imaginary adventures, his sister's late-night studying for her nursing exams. He spoke with a humility that made Soledad's chest tighten. His stories laced with gratitude rather than complaint. In return, Soledad shared fragments of herself carefully curated to fit the image she projected. She talked about her office job, handling paperwork for a small firm the weekend spent, reading to her grandfather the simple pleasures of a home-cooked meal. But beneath it all, the omissions gnawed at her. She didn't mention the penthouse in Los Angeles. She rarely visited the board meetings where her decisions moved millions, or the private accounts that could solve Manuel's worries in an instant. Instead, she listened, her heart swelling with each detail he revealed, and silently vowed to help in ways he wouldn't trace back to her. One crisp afternoon, as they strolled through the neighborhood park, Manuel paused by a fountain. "You know, Soledad, talking to you feels easy, like I've known you longer than these few weeks." His eyes met hers, warm and unguarded, and for a moment she almost confessed everything. But fear clamped down. Fear that her truth would shatter this fragile connection, making him see her as distant, unattainable. Instead, she smiled. "It does for me, too. You're different from anyone I've met." Their bond grew through small gestures. She brought him coffee from a local spot. though it was from an upscale roastery she frequented. He shared homemade tamales his mother had taught him to make wrapped in foil and still warm from the stove. They laughed over shared memories, his tales of childhood mischief in Guatemala, her fabricated stories of quiet family holidays. But cracks began to form subtle at first. It started with a phone call. They were sitting on a bench watching children play when her cell buzzed. She answered without thinking, putting it on speaker as she adjusted her bag. Yes, confirm the transfer. Wire the $150,000 to the Geneva account. Use the offshore entity from last quarter. Manuel's head turned slightly, his expression neutral but his eyes narrowing. She ended the call quickly, her cheeks flushing. Old client from my job. Some international paperwork, nothing exciting. He nodded, but the easy flow of their talk stuttered. Sounds complicated. Must keep you busy. She changed the subject, but the moment lingered like a shadow. A few days later, they stopped at a modest cafe Manuel favored, a hole-in-the-wall with vinyl seats and strong black coffee. Soledad scanned the menu absent-mindedly. I'll have an espresso with Ethiopian beans double shot and a dash of Madagascar vanilla syrup. The barista blinked, puzzled. Ma'am, we don't have that here. Just regular drip or instant. You sure you're not thinking of that fancy place downtown? Soledad laughed it off, ordering a plain black instead. Habit from an old spot a friend took me to. Sorry. Manuel chuckled, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. You've got refined tastes. Must come from somewhere. She waved it away, but inside panic flickered. How many more slips before he pieced it together? The tipping point came midweek during a light rain. They ducked under a shop awning, and Soledad's wallet slipped from her pocket as she reached for her phone. It fell open, revealing cards and receipts, and at the top, the unmistakable black gleam of an American Express Centurion card embossed with her full name, Soledad Meyer. The card that screamed exclusivity invitation, only a symbol of the elite world she inhabited. Manuel's gaze landed on it for a split second before she snatched the wallet up. Just an old card, she muttered, stuffing it away. From a rewards program or something. He said nothing, but the silence stretched. Their walk home was quieter than usual, the rain pattering like unspoken questions. At her porch, he handed her the small umbrella he'd been holding. See you tomorrow. Of course, she replied, forcing a smile. But tomorrow came, and Manuel didn't appear at 3:42. Soledad waited by the window, her coffee growing cold. She paced the room, checking the clock every minute. An hour passed, then 2. The street remained empty save for the usual neighbors. The next day was the same. No familiar stride, no wave from afar. She ventured out, walking the route they often took, but he was nowhere. Doubt turned to ache. Had her slips driven him away? Or was it something else? By the third day, the emptiness settled like a weight. Soledad sat at the window, staring at the spot where he usually emerged. Tears blurred her vision as memories replayed his laugh, his stories, the way he made her feel seen without knowing her secrets. What have I done? She whispered to the empty room. Grandfather Joaquin noticed her withdrawn state over dinner. Mija, what's troubling you? You've been quiet. She shook her head, but the dam broke. It's Manuel. He hasn't come by. I think he knows something's off. Joaquin sighed, setting down his fork. Secrets have a way of surfacing. But if it's real, it'll weather the storm. Soledad buried her face in her hands, the truth pressing harder. How long could she hide before it cost her everything? The emptiness stretched into the 4th day, a heavy silence that blanketed Soledad's world. She barely left the window, her eyes scanning the street for any sign of Manuel's familiar figure. Meals went untouched, conversations with her grandfather were clipped and distant. Joaquin watched her with growing concern, his own heart aching for the granddaughter who had come seeking solace but found only turmoil. On the evening of the 4th day, as dusk settled over the neighborhood, Joaquin knocked softly on her door. He entered carrying a steaming cup of herbal tea, his steps slow and deliberate. Mija, you can't go on like this, he said, placing the cup on her nightstand. He's been gone, and you're fading away. Soledad turned from the window, her eyes red-rimmed. I ruined it, Grandpa. He knows something's wrong, he must. The phone call, the card. I saw it in his eyes. Joaquin sat beside her on the bed, his hand resting on hers. Secrets weigh heavy, but they don't have to break you. Yesterday, I saw him standing outside the house for nearly 10 minutes. He paced, looked up at your window, then turned and left. He's hurting too, her breath caught. Why didn't he come in? Because he's proud, mija, and confused. This morning his friend Victor came by to fix the sink. He mentioned seeing you two at that cafe, the fancy order, the card in your wallet. Manuel confided in him. He's not angry about the money. He's wounded because he thought what you shared was real. Tears spilled down Soledad's cheeks. I love him, Grandpa. That's why I hid it. I was afraid if he knew who I really am, the heiress, the empire, he'd pull away. Not out of hate, but because he'd feel less, Joaquin nodded slowly. Then tell him. Love built on half-truths crumbles. If it's meant to be, it'll stand. That night, Joaquin couldn't sleep. He slipped out after dinner, walking the short distance to the auto shop where Manuel was closing up. The younger man wiped his hands on a rag, surprise flickering across his face as Joaquin approached. Evening, sir. Manuel said, his voice steady but tired. What brings you here? Joaquin leaned against a workbench. You, son. You've been avoiding my house and my granddaughter. Manuel's jaw tightened. I respect you, but things got complicated. Complicated how? Because she's not who she said. Joaquin's eyes were kind but direct. She loves you, Manuel, enough to fear losing you if you knew the truth. She's Soledad Meyer, yes, the one from the magazines, but she's also the girl who watched you from that window long before you met, drawn to your kindness. Manuel looked away, his hands clenching the rag. I don't care about the money. I care that every story we shared feels tainted now. She looked at me like I was special, but it was from up high looking down. Joaquin shook his head. No, son. She stood eye to eye with you. You're the one stepping back. She's lost so much, her mother, to the stress of that world lovers who chased her fortune. You helped an old man without knowing he was her grandfather. That's why she fell for you. Manuel's shoulders slumped, the weight of Joaquin's words sinking in. I just wanted something real. Then give her a chance to make it so. The next afternoon, storm clouds gathered once more, thunder rumbling in the distance. Soledad stood on the porch, clutching the faded umbrella Manuel had once held over her. Rain began to fall in heavy drops, soaking the street. She had no plan, only a desperate hope. At 3:42, a figure emerged through the downpour. Manuel, without a jacket, his shirt clinging to him as he approached. Soledad, he said, stopping a few feet away. Water streamed down his face, but his eyes were clear. She stepped forward, the umbrella forgotten. Manuel, please. I came to tell you everything, no more hiding. He waited, arms crossed against the chill. My name is Soledad Meyer. I inherited Meyer Realty after my father died. I have accounts in Geneva, a card that opens doors I never asked for. I've been on magazine covers, made deals worth millions. But that's not why I'm here. I came to escape that world, to be with my grandfather. And then I saw you, helping him, helping everyone without a single expectation. The rain intensified, but neither moved. Why hide it? Manuel asked, his voice low but edged with hurt. Because I was scared. Scared you'd see me as untouchable, that you'd back away, not from hate, but from feeling unequal. I've lost people to my name before. With you, it felt real simple, honest. I didn't want to lose that. He ran a hand through his wet hair. You think I'm that fragile? That money would scare me off. I'm not angry about what you have, Soledad. I'm hurt because you didn't trust me enough to know the truth. Every laugh, every story did you think I'd shatter if I knew, tears mixed with rain on her face. I was wrong. I thought I was protecting us, but I was just afraid of being truly seen. Silence hung between them, broken only by the storm. Then Manuel stepped closer, his hand reaching for hers. If we're starting over, no more secrets. I'm just a mechanic with 2 kids and a beat-up truck. But I can love honestly if you can too. She squeezed his hand, the warmth cutting through the cold. I can. I will. As the rain eased, they stood there, the first threads of trust rebuilding. In the weeks that followed their rain-soaked reconciliation, Soledad and Manuel rebuilt their connection with deliberate care, like mending a fragile vessel. There were no grand gestures, no sweeping declarations, just quiet mornings and honest evenings where truths flowed freely. Manuel returned to his routine at the garage, his hands stained with grease, but now with Soledad walking part of the way with him, their fingers intertwined. She shared the full weight of her world, the boardrooms where she commanded respect, the isolation of her inheritance, the hollow victories that had left her empty. He listened without judgment, his steady presence a balm to her fears. Soledad made changes not out of obligation, but choice. She stepped back from the day-to-day operations of Meyer Realty, delegating to trusted executives while she rented a modest apartment near Manuel's neighborhood. Mornings found her sweeping her own porch, afternoons at the local market bargaining for fresh produce. The luxury she once took for granted felt distant, replaced by the satisfaction of simple tasks. Manuel's mother, Elena, welcomed her with open arms during family dinners, teaching her recipes passed down from Guatemala tamales wrapped in banana leaves, rice simmered with spices. Soledad's laughter filled the small kitchen, her hands learning to knead dough alongside Elena's. Manuel's children embraced her swiftly, their innocence bridging any gaps. Lucia, with her wide eyes and endless questions, tugged Soledad's hand during walks, showing off crayon drawings of our new family. Benji warmed slower, but one evening he climbed into her lap during story time, his small head resting against her shoulder as she read about adventurous bears. "You're nice," he whispered, and Soledad's eyes glistened. Mateo Manuel's younger brother, who often helped with the kids, nodded approvingly. "You fit here," he said one night over coffee. "Don't let the past pull you away." Inspired by Manuel's quiet generosity, Soledad established a scholarship fund anonymously through the community library. She named it after Lucia, and Benji funneling resources to support local children like Manuel's sister, Ana, who now had her tuition covered without knowing the source. Soledad signed the donation simply as, "From someone helped by a man who expected nothing." It was her way of giving back, mirroring the selfless acts that had drawn her to him. As months passed, their love deepened into something unbreakable. One quiet evening on the porch, Manuel pulled a simple red string from his pocket and tied it around her wrist. "I don't have diamonds," he said, his voice low. "But this is a promise. If we build a life together, I want our kids, yours and mine, to know their mother chose love over everything else. Soledad, will you walk the rest of this road with me?" She pulled him close, her answer in the way she held him. Yes, every step. Their wedding was intimate, held in the sun-dappled reading room of the neighborhood library where they had shared so many afternoons. Folding chairs were arranged by friends and family, wildflowers from Elena's garden adorning the tables. Lucia and Benji walked ahead, scattering petals with gleeful abandon. Joaquin stood at the front, his eyes misty as he watched his granddaughter approach in a simple white dress, her arm linked with Manuel's. During the ceremony, Joaquin spoke softly. "We can buy houses, but we can't buy the feeling of coming home. Today I see my granddaughter has finally found hers." Vows were exchanged in hushed tones, Manuel promising to love her truths, Soledad vowing to trust his strength. They kissed amid applause from the small gathering, Elena, Mateo, Ana, and a handful of neighbors who had witnessed their story unfold. Life settled into a rhythm of contentment. Manuel continued at the garage, his days ending with Soledad waiting outside, a shared smile, erasing the fatigue. She volunteered at the library, helping children with reading programs, her wealth, now a tool for quiet good rather than isolation. Evenings were filled with family, Lucia's artwork pinned to the fridge, Benji's laughter during games, Joaquin joining for stories by the fire. Ana graduated nursing school, her path eased by the unseen fund, and the family celebrated with a backyard barbecue. In those moments, Soledad reflected on the window where it began, the view of a man whose kindness had reshaped her world. Love, she realized, wasn't about status or secrets. It was choosing each other daily in the ordinary and the profound. As Manuel kissed her goodnight, his hand on her growing belly, their first child on the way, she whispered, "Thank you for not walking away." He pulled her closer. "Thank you for letting me stay."